Yo, what is up everyone, back here with another video. Today we're going to be doing a video around the core of Zacian and Groudon, pretty much giving you guys a rental code that you can utilize for Showdown, like, obviously for tournaments on cart that aren't ladder tournaments. Ladder tournaments you need the pace for, which will be in the description. Pretty much that. So overall, I'd say this kind of team is pretty standard when it comes to double restricted. I mean, it basically has all the normal tools that you would expect when it comes to this kind of format. So you're not really gonna struggle too much, I think, to pick up on kind of the main ideas behind this team, right? Basically, the main concept that you just need to recognize is like you pretty much have Groudon for the Sun support, then you have like kind of a bulky core between like Incineroar and Grimmsnarl, and then you have like Zacian to kind of contribute to the offense and give you offense on like different coverage, right? So pretty much I'd say it's a pretty straightforward concept as a whole, and like kind of how the team functions. Obviously, too, when it comes to utilizing it, you're going to need to make sure that you're being smart with like your maxes, right? But the main two maxes on this team are going to be Venusaur and Charizard, with sometimes a potential Groudon max, but majority of the time it's going to be focused around those two. So that's the main thing that I would be that's like the main kind of summary of the team. But we're gonna go through each individual set and kind of explain what it does on the team, and then from there we can kind of talk about the pairs and stuff. So first up is Groudon. Groudon's just running the standard Swords Dance set. There's nothing too complicated about this. I think it's like a pretty straightforward set that most Groudon run. You're just able to exert a lot of offense early, which is nice, and you're able to utilize that citrus berry to get extra healing. So pretty much what you can do with that obviously is just give yourself a bit kind of breathing room if like you're swapping into Kyogre Water Spout, especially with screens up, like you'll be able to take like multiple Water Spouts from like Kyogre swapping in as long as the weather's in your favor, right? Zacian's running a pretty standard set. We're running Behemoth Blade, Sacred Sword, Substitute, and Protect. The main reason why we're not running Swords Dance or we're running Substitute is because in this format, Intimidate pivots are very common, and being able to run Substitute and kind of protect yourself from like max moves or like stall out turns is really nice. So it's definitely something that I think is worth utilizing in this format particularly. In terms of the actual spread and stuff, it's meant to be very bulky adamant, so it can pretty much take hits well behind screen, right? Like obviously it has some investment, but majority of the time it's going to be focused around just taking hits pretty comfortably, so that's going to be the main focus. So next up is Venusaur. Venusaur is running the standard like bulky Coba Berry set I like to put on a lot of my teams. The main thing to keep in mind with this is just pretty much you're going to be in a kind of spot with it where you need to make sure you're capitalizing off the Vine Lash. It's meant to take a bunch of hits, right? Because you have the Coba Berry, basically, you're not susceptible to max Airstream, which means that you can pretty much absorb any, like, max Airstream, any super effective move, at least one turn. And, like, it can even live a Landorus, like, Airstream out of max. And especially with screens, you can pretty much take any max Airstream move, which is really nice because it's, like, basically a sleep powder that you are sure to get off as long as you land, right? That too, you can also max it. It's pretty tough to get rid of, right? So that's like the nice thing about it. When it comes to Incineroar, Incineroar is pretty much the same standards that I like to run on a lot of my Incineroars. I think that when it comes to Incineroar as a Pokemon, it's like really interesting, right? Because you can kind of edit its speed to kind of beat other Incineroars in terms of speed tying. In this team, it's pretty beneficial to be faster than most other Incineroars because you can go for a fast throat chop, kind of like mess them up in that regard, and put yourself in a position pretty much where the other Incineroar can't pivot and you have like all the pivoting potential on the team. Now, the one thing to note about that is that with the Incineroar, right, being fast, it means in Trick Room, obviously, you're going to be under speeding, right? Or, like, you're going to be going after the opposing Incineroars. So, it's kind of beneficial with this team to not be in Trick Room, but, you still have option to do so. Next up is Grimmsnarl. So, Grimmsnarl, basically, the debate between the Grimmsnarl for me was Thunderwave over Scary Face. I picked Thunderwave, but Scary Face could have a lot of merit on this team as well. Pretty much with Scary Face, you can Scary Face yourself so that you can underspeed certain things. And that's pretty useful in a lot of situations because you can kind of, if you're in Trick Room, right, and like you don't want to lose to a certain Pokemon, you can like slow yourself down so that you can beat it. And the main thing that kind of goes hand in hand with that is basically being able to what's it called, being able to kind of have that extra form of speed control benefit you. Now thunder wave, you get the chance of paralysis, right? So paralysis obviously is really beneficial to yourself, because then, well, now you have a chance to kind of cheese the opponent out of a win regardless of the situation. So it kind of works out well in that regard. The main thing is like pretty much between those two. Obviously spirit break is a guaranteed move. Screens is pretty guaranteed as a move. You don't have any reason to not use light screen and reflect. Pretty much is giving the team extra bulk. Grimmsnarl kind of acts as like that wall that kind of like gives the rest of the team all of its power in terms of like being able to sit on the field, right? Whereas the other partners kind of compensate for the damage that Grimmsnarl doesn't provide. So it kind of works out well. Overall, I'd say that when looking at this team, the main thing that you're going to need to make sure to utilize is the Charizard, which kind of goes great into our next point. Charizard is utilizing the Life Orb set. It's running like really strong moves. So it's running Blast Burn, it's running Hurricane, it's running Ancient Power, and it's running Protect. Pretty much what you're doing is you're just going for really powerful G-Max Wildfires and really powerful Max Airstreams. And because you have the stronger base power moves, it's going to be doing as much damage as possible. Ancient Power allows you to deal with other Charizards in the mirror, or like, you know, if you're playing against another Charizard, you don't just auto lose to it. So you kind of have options there, and you're able to kind of exert pressure that way. Now, the crucial thing with this Zard as well is that it is going to be doing a bunch of damage, right? Like, the small EV optimizations are just so it takes less life orb damage, so don't mistake that as like bulk. It's just so it takes a little bit less chip from like solar power and like life orb combined. But the main idea behind the Zard is just being able to like do a bunch of offense, right? So yeah, it's just a really good damage dealer. I'm sure we'll see this a lot in the format because it is really good into like these Sun teams, especially all the Zacian around. The one thing with this team that you have to be cautious of is dealing with opposing Kyogre teams, but pretty much the core of like Groudon, Zacian, Venusaur, and like Incineroar lets you deal with that pretty comfortably, right? So yeah, and then we can go to the common pairs with this team. So the common pairs with this team are really interesting. With Groudon Grimmsnarl as the lead, it's usually better into matchups where there's no Zacian on the opposing team, or like if there is a Zacian on the opposing team, like you're pressuring majority of the team with Groudon, right? Because like you don't want to lead Groudon if like there's the potential like Kyogre swaps in and like ruins your day, right? Or at least you have to be prepared for Kyogre swapping in, get some free damage, and like swap out into Venusaur. Typically, if you're leading Groudon Grimmsnarl, I would normally expect the back to be something like Venusaur and like Zacian, because with screens, Venusaur works really well, and obviously you want Zacian in the back majority of the time. This is one of those restricted teams where it's not based around single modes for the most part. Like you're going to be bringing both restricteds majority of the time, except in certain situations. Now, the second common pair I wanted to highlight was Zacian and Incineroar. This pair is just focused around flexibility. You're able to exert immediate pressure with Zacian. You're able to go for parting shots and kind of bring in your other, like, you know, max Pokemon, your other, you know, maybe Charizard, right? So pretty much what you do is you like protect Zacian, parting shot, or you just go for Behemoth Blade, parting shot, or like fake out Behemoth Blade, whatever, and you're just able to exert a bunch of pressure in that regard, and also pivot into something in the back that can help your game plan a little bit more, right? Typically, I would normally expect like Charizard and Venusaur to be in the back if you're leading these two, along with like Groudon, but obviously it varies depending on like what game plan you're going for. Then finally, the last pair you'll see there is going to be Venusaur Groudon. So Venusaur Groudon, as I mentioned in the last video, is just good at exerting immediate pressure. If you're going for that, you have to make sure that either you're in a position where like Kyogre won't mess you up, right? Like if Kyogre's slower, this is a bad lead. But majority of the time Kyogre is going to be faster, so this should be fine into most Kyogre teams. You just have to make sure to be mindful of preserving your Groudon here, so that you don't kind of get messed with too much. Typically, if you're leading this, you'll usually have like Incineroar and like Zacian in the back, so it'll kind of give you some good synergy in that regard. The nice thing too with this team is I feel like it's very straightforward in terms of how it's played, right? Like what you're bringing is very kind of set in stone, right? Because you already have 2 slots guaranteed with Groudon and Zacian most of the time. Obviously, in some instances that won't be the case. Like you'll bring something else. Like you could potentially do a core of like Groudon, Incin, Grimmsnarl on like one of the max Pokemon, but like majority of the time you're gonna want Zacian, right? Now, I think the one exception to this might be in the mirror. In the mirror, it might actually be beneficial to just have the Groudon mode on its own, because Zacian is kind of a liability versus opposing Charizards. So if you have something like Grimmsnarl, Incineroar, Groudon, and like Charizard versus like opposing Zacian Groudon teams, it could actually be really good. So that's like the one exception I'd say. Like the mirror, I think, is where you don't really want to bring the Zacian. But majority of the time, you're going to be bringing the Zacian with the Groudon, right? Like it's very focused around bringing both and kind of hitting hard and dealing a bunch of damage. So it's really interesting in that regard. Now, a couple of other things to note with this team. So when it comes to a team like this overall, you have to recognize that it's going to be very centered around you using the options on the team to outplay your opponent. These kind of teams basically lend themselves to giving you a like pretty strong, well-rounded team that can deal with a lot of things that are thrown at you. However, because the options are linear, it's up to you to play up to the standard of the team. Whereas like you're not relying on like a surprise move or like something that's gonna surprise your opponents, right? So it's gonna be very crucial to kind of be consistent and like make good plays with this team, which obviously that works for majority of teams, but like there's no like surprise factors to this team, right? Everyone knows what you're gonna be doing with the team, so that's the main thing. But besides that, that's pretty much it for this team. I think it's a pretty good team as a whole. I think it's pretty well rounded. I think it'll be really good for. I think it'll be really good for everyone like that watches the channel to try out. I mean, it's just a good team. I mean, obviously, some people don't like using these restricteds, which makes sense, but I just think it overall it's like pretty solid. But yeah, so that's pretty much it for this video. Hopefully, you guys enjoy it. Tomorrow we'll be having a double upload. I'll be doing my first impressions on the format, and I'll be doing another rental code for you guys. So once again, guys, thank you for all the support. Make sure to check out the Patreon if you guys would like to support me out of this. And if you guys are looking to compete in the IRL circuit once it comes back, you know, because the official Pokemon circuit, it's starting soon. Make sure to hit me up for coaching. I do have coaching links down below, so you guys can improve your game and be ready for when events come back. But once again, guys, thank you for all the support. As always, I appreciate it, and I will see you guys on the next video. Peace.